In this course, we're going to cover fundamental diagramming concepts and how to create diagrams from a very basic level. The best way to practice this is to practice with a basic box and really test out line weights and colors and transparencies to see how you want to present diagrams. So we're going to go through a step-by-step process on how to create multiple ways of diagramming through a simple box. So as you can see here, we just have a very simple outline of a cube, a box, and you can use any program to create this. You can even create this in Illustrator. And as of now, everything just has an equal reading. You just read a three-dimensional cube if you wanted to. If you want your eyes to play tricks on you, you can, read like a hexagon with an intersection going through the centers, like depending how you read it, right? And so this is where adding emphasis helps. And so the first thing that we want to do is when it typically comes to these kinds of diagrams, which are axonometric diagrams, is to add some kind of emphasis of the form. So what we can do here, for example, is let me just go ahead here and let me create just a basic rectangle like this. And let me give it, I don't know, like a very thick line weight, maybe 5 point like this, okay? And let me just, move these around. Then I can add more points if I wanted to. Right? So now immediately you are reading some kind of form, okay? You can overemphasize this thick outline, number one. Number two is, let me just zoom in on here. Do you see how the corners have this curve to it? Even though it might seem a little too detailed, this actually changes the feel of the diagram. So in here, you can choose whether you want your caps to be rounded or squared off. So if we do the butt cap right here, so do you see how, oops, select this. So do you see how I changed the corner, right? Miter join, and then the cap is butt cap. Do you see how it's squared off now? It gives a different feel to the diagram. Okay, so you deciding whether you want it to be rounded or cornered will change the feel. One gives it, I wouldn't say like a cartoonish effect, it gives it more of like a creative graphic effect, whereas the squared off one gives it more of a technical feel. I know it sounds like very detail oriented, but once you do a lot of diagrams, the eye is going to tell right away. That's number one. Number two is this outline is helping you read, right? We can make this outline thicker. So this is like an option. Let me just make duplicates here. So let me duplicate this layer here, and let me turn it off. And so another option is we can give this a thicker outline. So maybe like 7, you see? So now it's really emphasizing the form, okay? Let me just change the name of this layer so we can really understand and compare. So let me turn these two on. So you see the difference? And we can maybe round this off if we wanted to. There we go, like that. All right, now the next thing is to even make it read more like a box is introducing like hidden lines, okay? So let me go ahead and duplicate this. And we can just name this hidden. And so if I go here, right, this is the, I guess, the hidden lines. We can give it like a dashed effect. So maybe 18 point. I had an overlap here. So now you're starting to understand that there is depth to this, okay? So we went from something super basic. Let's just look at very, very basic. Let me just duplicate this down here. right? So we went from something like this to something like this, right? To something like this, right? To something like this. So there's a huge difference now. Now, the next thing that we can add on here is color. And we can start with a solid contrast, right? So if I'm going to duplicate this here and hide it. And instead, I'm going to make this all white. I'll make it all white. And then I'm going to make a new layer down here. I'll call it background black for now. Actually, it should be in the very bottom right here. So this might sound a little complicated, but when you use a black background, it adds emphasis to the actual object on the black background, right? Like everything is emphasizing this because of the black background. When you don't have a black background and it's just like a white background and just a normal black line work, the line work itself needs to emphasize itself because the white background, we typically ignore it as negative space. It sounds a little, like, I guess, complicated and unnecessary, but intrinsically, that's what your eye is telling you when you look at something like this, right? Like this becomes emphasized immediately. It doesn't matter what color the line work is, right? I mean, unless it's like the same color as the background disappears, but the black background is immediately going to add emphasis to that object. Whereas when you look at it like this, it is contingent on how you show the line work in itself to emphasize. So using, backgrounds can be a good thing or it can be a hindrance because sometimes you may overemphasize everything and you don't want to do that. Sometimes you want to only emphasize one thing. So depending on how many things you show like on a dark background, it might be a unifying thing or it might end up becoming something that's almost like visual overload. So again, let's just review the process that we've had. So we did a simple box like this, right? Then we did something with a thicker outline, with even a thicker outline and rounded corners, with a dashed line, and then with a black background and negative space, and you get something like this. So do you see how quickly you can start to change the feel of a diagram? Now, the next thing that we're going to look at is color, okay? And so we can start off with like a monochromatic scheme, and then we can start doing like a complementary scheme to see how we start to add emphasis and how line work starts to play around with it. So we'll go back to the white background version. Let me just I like to name these things so that I can keep track. Let me just duplicate this one here. Let me drag that up, turn this off. And then this one, we'll call it box thicker color. Okay, so now let's add color to this. So there's a couple of ways that we can play around with this and show color. Number one is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to duplicate this over here. I always like to make duplicates and I always like to place it over the original because I like to have different options. And we can either do live paint or we can do shape builder. So I don't want these dashed lines here anymore. I just want this box, okay? And actually, this is actually a great example of when you don't have dashed lines. Let me just actually make this one a version without dashed lines. So if we get rid of this, immediately, right, we read a cube because you're getting rid of the dashed line, right? So your eye is immediately going to read the form because A, this outline is emphasizing the form, and B, you have this sense of contrast. So you start to appreciate all sides of the cube. Again, it sounds overly complicated for just a simple cube, but when it comes from a design standpoint, these things matter. And the exact same thing for the dark background version. If we hit them, for example, again, you start to read the form much faster. When you introduce hidden lines in a design, it adds a layer of information that you may not want to express. So you should be very aware of why you are showing like hidden lines in diagrams. Maybe you want to show the volume of the space without being too emphasized, for example. So let me just go back to here. And we have this one. So we can either do like a live paint, or we can do a shape builder. It's really a matter of preference for something this simple. So let me just go ahead and just simplify this. So we can go, let me just go ahead and do shape builder. It's probably easier for this. Okay, so that's my shape builder. And we can do, let's see different color schemes. So let's do a cyan color scheme. Just a simple cyan color scheme, I think we'll do. So we can do 100%. We'll do, these are 3 sides, so we'll do 3 versions of this. Do 100. We'll do 60. And we'll do 30, like that. Now we'll sample it with the eye. Right? And if I do Control Y, which is outline view, it'll allow me to place things directly, help me locate things. Place this one here. Place this one here. Place this one there. Let me just group these 3 together. Right? And then this thick outline that we have here, well, let me just do Control 2, lock this one. And go Arrange and bring to front. I'm sorry. There we go. Right? So you have something like this. That's number 1. As you can tell, you're not reading any of the line weights on here, right? Except the thick outline. And if you don't want to, you can just do it like this. You see? The eye immediately is going to read it right away, right? The eye is going to tell right away. And if you don't like the difference, right, you can make this a little bit closer. This is 100, so you might make this like maybe 75. So that's starting to read a little closer. And then this one can be 50, so it's only 25%. If you want it to read like this, a little bit closer. It's a matter of preference if you want high contrast within the same color scheme or not. Okay, now this is where a lot of nuance comes into play. So we can now introduce line color with the different color. So let me just go ahead and duplicate this. We can take this one and do Arrange and send it to back. So now, I'm not sure if you can tell, but do you see now you're reading the black lines here, you see? There's a difference between, let me just show you the difference between this, reading this, versus this. For some, you might want to show this because it quickly shows the edges, right? For others, no, they want the color to really emphasize the edges, the contrast of color. We can also add a black background on here just to show you the difference, right? Add that. Okay, now we can do something with this black background, which is really interesting. We can allow the line work to bleed with the background, to allow it to blend in with the background. So if I duplicate this, I'll turn these off. So for example, I think the background color was 90. So let me just see this stroke value here, and I can make this stroke value also 90, like that. So that blends in. Lock that, lock this. And then I can take this line work here and make it 90, okay? So now this is reading the same, but what I want to do is I actually want to make it thicker than this, right? So let me just go here. And let's make everything the same thickness of like 4. So do you see now? So do you see how this stroke blends in with the background? Now what you're reading, you're really emphasizing the plane, right? Okay, so then you can go back and reintroduce the hidden lines if you want to into this. Let me just grab it and we'll turn this one back on. And we'll see how that feels with the hidden lines in the background. I'm just doing Control C, and then here I'll do Control F, which is paste in front, right? And then I'll also make this, we'll keep it at like that. We can also do 90, actually, it doesn't matter. Keep it consistent. And so you get a reading like this, you just have to let your eyes adjust a bit, right? And so this is starting to give like a transparent effect to this at the same time. And so we can do this in the reverse. We can do this with like a white background. You just duplicate this. Okay. So this is everything with the same line weight thickness with a black background, you see? And it has the dashed lines in there. So it's starting to give like this transparent feel without even being transparent at all. But let's now switch these to a white background, or a white line that matches the white background. There, you see? And then you can make these thicker. You want to? Starts to feel more graphic and more creative, I guess, but you want to make sure that it's not confusing. I mean, some people may not be able to read this like this, right? It may feel like a hexagon for some. It just depends. You don't want it to play tricks on your eyes. So that's why hierarchy is so important, why that this one shouldn't be too thick. That, or even 0.75, like this. Okay, now we can start to add transparency to this, which is really interesting because now it'll give it a completely different feel, because transparency will give you overlaps of color that creates new colors. So let's go back, and I'm gonna take just a typical, we'll take this one, let me duplicate it. And we'll do transparency. Okay. And then again, I'll just take this one here to the side. And what I want to do is I actually want to get all sides to this. I want to actually shape build all sides to this. So let me first make everything the same stroke value. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate it again because I want to get rid of like this. And then I want to get rid of this, and I'll show you why. So I'll go ahead and select this, and I'm going to shape build. So do this, select this, this, and this, right? I'll select this one and shape build again and do this, this, and this. Okay, great. So now we have 1, 2, 3, right? 4, 5, 6. Okay. And so what we want to say is that maybe the sides are transparent. Let's say it's like a glass box, right? And the ground is solid and the top is solid. So this is, I'm getting like MC Escher vibes right now because this is starting to confuse my eyes. So let me just pull these across to help my eyeballs. There you go. Okay. And so, okay. So we can say that 1, 2, 3, 4. So, and we want these all to be, we can make them all the same color, to be honest, because the transparencies are actually going to make them a different color, and you'll see what I mean. So we can make them all cyan. Yeah. Like this, okay? And we have the original one here, okay? And then we can give them all maybe a 60% transparency. And then this and this can be 100% cyan. Just flip it. Okay. Let me do Control Y because it's easier to place these items. So I'm going to place the top and bottom ones first. So the top will go here, and the bottom one will go here, right? And so we need to be cognizant of the arrangement of what goes in front, what goes in back, right? So this one will go here. And this one will go here. And this one will go here. Okay. Now, in terms of hierarchy, right, this face, arrange, bring to front, should be in the front. And then arrange, bring to front, okay? I mean, we can have, this thick outline can also be all in the front as well, but in terms of transparencies, we want this in the front. And then arrange, bring to front, right? Let me just, like that, okay? And then let me just click on this one and click on this one and do Control 2 to lock it. Arrange, send to back. Okay. Very good. So now we know that this for sure is always going to be in the front, right? And this is always going to, we want these to always be in the front. We can give the top a transparency if we wanted to as well. So I think all of these have a 60%. So we can also give this a 60% if we wanted to, right? What also helps is changing the color of the actual faces. But before I do that, I want to show you how this looks on a black background. So this is it on a white background. If you're doing a black background, this is how you will read it, right? Again, it's not that helpful. I don't think it's helpful. Let's change the actual. I'm just locking these. Let's change the color and make it white instead. And see if that helps. I mean, you can read a little bit of the transparency effect, but I don't think it's helpful. I think there needs to be a contrast of color here for you to help start reading these things, okay? So let's first start with like a monochromatic color change. So let's do Control-Alt-2 to unlock everything. Let's turn this off. So what we can do is take this one. We can keep that at 100 cyan. Maybe we make this one 75 so that you read the different faces. We can take this one and this can be 50. So let me select these three and lock them. Select the back one. Maybe this is 25, right? And then this one is maybe 10, like that. Let me go ahead and just change the stroke value, the stroke colors back to black. And then this one can be 5 or wait, that's good. Like that. Okay. So now you're starting to read a difference, right? You're starting to read the cue. Let me just lock this. I'm just making sure my faces do not have strokes to them. That's all. Okay. So now this is starting to read like a glass box, right? So the transparencies are all the same. You see 60%, 60%, the back face, they all have, even the top is all 60% transparency. But we change the color, you see? And so changing the color now starts to give a little bit of hierarchy. I mean, if I don't keep on zooming in and zooming out, I'm hurting your eyes. So to give a little hierarchy, right? Let me turn this on with the black. Again, it hurts the eye, so you're having to adjust until you get it, right? Now, what we can do is like have a substantial color contrast. So this one, maybe like this one gets like a 20%, right? And then maybe this one, we just completely change the color to it, right? So like we get this in here, right? So it's like 25% with maybe like 5% K, right? And then this one here is, and we throw in a green value in there like that. Well, let's do 50-50 like that, and that's good. Like this. So now you're starting to read the faces more, right? And what we can also do is start to, maybe this is not as transparent. Maybe this is like 80% transparent, right? Change the background again. Or we can go back. And maybe this one is like this. You see? So it starts to help to read as like this transparent box. I think it's most helpful when you have different colors. Let me take off the hidden line on here. Let me just lock these. So when we take off the hidden line, your eyes start to help a little bit in reading the transparency. 60, 60. Oops, like that. I actually like that this has more of a transparency than this. So these are all 60% transparencies. Maybe like this one is a little less transparent, about 40, like this. So I actually prefer this without the hidden line, where you just allow the edges to do the reading for you in the background, right? Like, and you can maybe give this even more of a transparency. Maybe this is a 50, like that. I think this now gives a really great reading of like a transparent box, right? And again, it's so important. You see, like dashed lines can sometimes be helpful and sometimes they can't be helpful. I think the dashed line in this scenario makes it more confusing. So if we do with a background, Let your eyes settle a little bit. Without the background. So do you see again when you sometimes add a back, like I think this looks better in the white background than on the black background. I mean, some people may disagree, but I feel like the black background is making this compete too much, whereas with the white background, uh, this is being emphasized by itself. You don't need the black background to add more emphasis. Now, what I want to show is like a multi-tone approach, right? So let's pretend we're using these same colors, but we don't have any transparencies to these. So let me just go ahead and duplicate this and do multi-tone. So let's just say that all of these do not have a transparency to them, like that. I don't really like these colors. Let's do like cyan, and let's do, let's see. Okay. And then let's bring this to front, arrange, bring to front. Okay. So we have something like this, right? This is just like a multi-tone. We could add emphasis to a single face, right? By using a dual shade here, right? And then a single shade here. So we can go here, and then this one can be a same cyan, right? But maybe it's like 80, and we'll do 80 for now. So do you see, like, it's saying that, oh, look at this face here. This is the face that deserves emphasis, right? This happens a lot in architectural diagrams, to be honest. And then let's look at it with a black background. I think it's either or. It doesn't really matter if you do black or white background on this one, because it's really about this face, and then everything else is secondary, even the background. And so here, I can go ahead right here, and let's change the strokes to all white, so that it's like blending with the background. So if I select this and this and this, and let me lock it. I think there's more. Yeah, we have these little dudes in the back. Let me lock those as well. And let me just select everything here. And let's give it a white line work, show you how it bleeds. And, oh, I think that became cyan. I'm sorry. Make it like this and like that. There you go. Again, this starts to become a little bit more plainer, you know? It starts to play around with your eyes a little bit. Whether you should read it as a planar thing or as a cubical thing. I mean, with the background, it's not bad. I would say the black background, I think it helps. It ties it back in together. I think in this scenario, this is a little bit more confusing. And so when you have a multi-tone with a blending of the backgrounds, you still want contrast like this. Like you want this white to contrast with the black. I think when you have a blending in, it becomes too confusing. It looks too planar. Also, we can change the background color, right? So maybe, the background becomes this, like this very pastel magenta, or like this, this kind of, like a soft taupe, you know? I actually like this color. This is a nice color. The next thing that we can do is start to show how things like open up, for example, like how the box is opening, right? So let me just lock this and let me just duplicate this again. And for example, we can do almost like an exploded axon, right? Where this comes across like this, right? And let me just go ahead and copy this like that. And let's just pull that across like this. Right? And then we can, so this is where dash lines are helpful. So we can go in here and give it a dash line. 18, way too thick. Doesn't need to be this thick. It can be like this. Or even 0.5. And no fill. Range, right to front. And let's make it black. Let's see. Right? Don't forget, these right here are still the old transparent backgrounds. We can go ahead and, for example, give this another cyan. Well, first off, this is still, let's make it 100%. And let's make this also 100. Oh, that is 100%. There you go. Like this. We can make this all black line work if we want to. Let me just go ahead and lock them. Right? So this doesn't need to be this light. We can have it look like wrapping around at let's see, maybe 40. Let me see what value. I think this is at 50. Oh, this is at 80. Okay, so we can have this at 50. And this at 25. Right? Like that. And this one maybe make it a little thicker. It's easier to read. And then this one can have like that. And then you can use the same technique. Maybe like this pulls up like that, you know? This opens out across like this. And then you can do the same dash lines if you wanted to. You could even show this like a box that's opening. So let me go ahead and duplicate this again. And let's say, for example, okay, we're going to delete this. And we'll delete this. I can take this and just, let me just do Control Y. And put it right here. And let's give it the same. So you see how this outline shouldn't read like this anymore because it's breaking the continuity, right? So we actually want this outline. Let me just add a control point. That goes here. And let me add a control point right here. There you go. You see, now this looks like it's opening, right? It looks like a box that's opening, and you can put like, we can literally take this, Control C, Control V. We can say, you know, I don't know, like, I actually like it when it breaks here, and then we can go in here. We can give a dashed line like this and an arrowhead. I like using the open one, arrowhead 11. I like that one. Let me see where it is. Let me just flip it like that. Let's increase the scale. Maybe 150. This has a fill to it. Let's get rid of the fill. And this needs to be much bigger. There you go, like that. And I think proportionally this should be like this, and this should be a little bit thicker in line weight. Yeah, I think 2, and then proportions is so important when you're looking, like this arrowhead's still a little bit too thick, I would say, so there you go, like this. Right, where you place this is your choice, whether you want it dead center, in the middle of the space like this, outside like this, or you could emphasize operation, right? So these symbols matter so much. They're so like primal, in a sense, because they're so basic, but they're so helpful in reading operation in a diagram. So for example, if I go here, right, and just rotate it, maybe 45, like that. And then we use I to sample this. And then do the same arrowhead. That's not it, but it's actually arrowhead 13 is much better. You see, I like arrowhead 13. Let me change to 13 as well. I like the proportion of 13. It's longer. Right? And then let me just rotate it like this. Indicating operation, depending where you place it. You can have it more like that. So as you can tell, we just went from something so simple as a very simple box. Let me just go back, show you the original, right? We went from, okay, let me turn off the background. Let me turn off this one, and let's turn off the background. So we went from something like this, right, to something like this, right? So it just shows you like just the way that you use color and transparency and line work and symbols can completely change the language of what you're trying to present as a diagram. So once you understand how to really take control of this representational style, you can use it anywhere, whether it's on a building diagram or an infographic or a product design, or some like operation. Understanding this like hierarchy of color and transparency and line work and symbols will take you a very far way in representing your designs through diagrammatic means. I hope you found this helpful. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comment section below. And I'm just going to run through a bunch of diagrams like this at the outro of this video, just to show you the sequence of the diagrams and what you can do with things like this. Thanks again.